Hey guys, Mark Inneo here. I'm here with my good friend Cameron Monroe, and we're hanging out at the Equity Farm today, but a lot of people don't know that Cam and his beautiful wife Tess live on a very special country property in Saskatchewan. So we're going to catch up the way country boys do. We're going to rap about real estate, and we want you to come along for the ride.
Let's do it.
So Cam, before it gets too late and before we have too much bourbon, I want to hear the story of the place in Cold Lake, Alberta. It's probably the best real estate deal that I've heard about, this year. It's the best story. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the full story is a buddy of mine. He actually found a building on MLS, just on Realtor, a listing, and it was 63 units. It was in Cold Lake, and he just sent it to me because he was curious and he's trying to get into the space. And I looked at it and I looked at the numbers and I said, well, that's a pretty good deal. It makes sense to me. And I started talking to the agent who was listing it. We connected, we had a lot of conversations, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna fly out there. So at the time I was living in Ajax, Ontario. Right. Flew out to Edmonton, drove the 3 hours to Cold Lake, and walked that building. And at the same time, I spent 3 days there just getting acquainted with the town, understanding what is Cold Lake. And it's very favorable. And long story short, with that deal, I was too late to put an offer out. We lost it, so be it, that's okay. God bless. But what happened was I was able to build a relationship with that listing agent. And a few months later, he calls me and he says, hey, when we were running comparables on that 63 unit, do you remember Spirit Arms, the 32 unit building? I said, yeah, of course. Like that one performed better. Like it's a smaller building, but it performed better or had the better potential than the one we were looking at. And he said, well, for the second time, it's going to fall out of contract, right? The buyers are going to lose it because they can't close on it. Right. He said, we might be able to strike while the iron's hot. I said, oh, okay, awesome. He says, well, the whisper price is 3.2 million. I said, okay, so 100 grand a unit. I said, well, that seems fair. I said, let's put an offer in at 2.5 million. Let's see where that, we'll do a discount, right?
Dude, nicely done.
Yeah, and then he, you can imagine he's kind of like, oh,
yeah, okay. 3 deals fall through, come on.
Yeah, exactly, right? And I said, put it at 2.5, but we'll honor whatever closing date that they had. And I knew at that time, like if the closing date was only just over a month away, I was like, we're gonna run into challenges, most likely, but at least we might be able to get an extension if we do that. We just want to get it under contract. So we sent the offer in at 2.5 million and they accepted it right away, which was like, for us, I was like, oh my gosh. Like,
who owned this building?
So this was a nonprofit. The long story short on this building was the town built it, gifted it to this nonprofit. Amazing. And it kind of goes against the whole story, and it kind of feeds into why nobody was able to close on it, because what they were doing, it was 32 units, but it was a condo building. It was a condominium, so 32 separate titles. And what they were trying to do was do a rent-to-own program for people to get into the units and then own them over a period of time, doing a lease option. The nonprofit who owned the building, they had to liquidate physical assets in Alberta, in the province, and that was one of them. So they had to just kind of get rid of them. By doing that, they actually had to terminate all of the lease option contracts, the rent-to-own contracts that they had with the tenant buyers in the building. And what they did to the tenant buyers, they said, you can stay in the building, but you're just gonna be a traditional tenant. You'll no longer have the option to buy.
Yeah, they didn't buy it. No one bought it.
Nobody had closed on their unit at that point.
Thank God. That would have screwed everything.
It would have been a literal nightmare.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then, so with that, thank you. Yeah. With that, about half of the tenants stayed and half of them left.
Okay.
And that was one of the biggest challenges for people trying to close on the deal, because all of your A and B lenders, they were looking at the deal to say like, well, this asset is at half capacity, and it's been at half capacity for over a year, because the seller, they just thought, we're just not going to put new tenants in there, it'll just sell really quickly, no problem. So, and that wasn't the case. They never actively leased them all out. All it did was it created a trailing 12-month period of vacancy. So basically what we did is we put our offer in. We knew that we were trying to hit the original closing date that the previous buyer had. And we learned really quickly, because I remember exactly that closing date, and you'll probably laugh, was December 29th.
Yeah.
And I knew, like, nobody's going to close on this between Christmas and New Year's.
Absolutely.
No lawyer, no appraiser, no inspector is going to come in here in the next 2 weeks to do all of that.
Yeah.
So obviously we were very transparent. We were showing that we were calling the appraisers and the inspectors and stuff, and everybody was booked out into like the end of January.
Yeah.
So we went to the sellers. We said, here's the situation. We're trying, and this is the case. So we're going to ask for an extension. And it was like to like February 14th.
We
I
want
think.
to extend 7 months.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So we went to February 14th, and they accepted it. They said no problem, and we started to do our due diligence and get all of that worked up.
Yeah.
And we talked to multiple lenders, like multiple brokers, multiple lenders, and all of them had the same kind of conditions or I guess concerns that the previous buyers were having.
Now, you weren't even considering MLI at this point.
No, not yeah, and we didn't end up doing MLI for that asset because, our only opportunity if we wanted to do MLI for that asset would be the affordability.
Yeah.
And our rents in that building, so we didn't even own it, but the rents in that building were already above the affordability index.
Remind me what year it is, because it's fairly new, actually.
Yeah, so this asset was completed building in 2013.
It wouldn't meet the efficiency?
No, because it has to be less than 2 years old. I think maybe it might be even less than 1 year.
Room. It's
a
amazing.
beautiful.
It's the most beautiful furnace room.
Oh, yeah,
How can that thing not be?
I know.
Anyway.
I know. It's just the fine print in the conditions.
Right.
So we started to understand that we're not going to get the financing that we needed. And if I backtrack a bit, when we first put our offer in, we poked them to say like, hey, let's do a seller financing, term to close on this. And they said,
were they open to that?
They weren't. And they said like, listen, we understand how that works, but we're a nonprofit. We can't do that.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we never really touched it. But as time went on and, there's a lot of like weeds in the story, we had to basically get like 2 more extensions.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where we kept poking at them and saying like, listen, like we're showing you, like we were very transparent. We're showing you that we're trying to close on this deal.
How many operators failed before that?
2.
Okay.
2.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And
So
it was tied up for a while
they were
too.
open to suggestions.
Yeah. But ultimately what happened was after multiple extensions, we actually fell out of contract.
Oh.
Yeah, we missed one of the deadlines on the financing conditions, and we
Scary.
didn't exercise it in time. So we lost our deposit. And it was funny.
They also thought they lost another operator.
Exactly, right? So it was becoming a very stressful situation for
Right.
both parties. And basically, the night that I told my community that we've lost it and we were kind of like so down in the dumps, the listing agents came back to us the next day and they said like, listen, the seller's willing to do seller financing
Nice.
at roughly 75% loan to value.
Nice.
But it's got to be 8% interest only payments. And I said, thank you so
Perfect.
much. Well, I said, thank you so much. I said, that's a great deal, given the market, that's appropriate, all of this stuff. But I said, this is why it's not going to work for me.
Okay.
And I was using their financials that they provided to me and showing like how the income that it currently generates
wasn't making any
still does not cover that debt
weird.
service. And a side note, while we were doing our due diligence, we got permission from them to work with a property manager to start leasing out those units at market rent.
Amazing.
So even without closing on it, we had already got the building up to about 75% occupied
Right.
from 50%.
So your trailing 12 was disastrous.
Yeah,
You're
and we're
actually putting tenants in.
Yeah,
And you're negotiating.
and it's
with
not
them
even
on-
our deal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love
right.
it.
So I knew on my side, it could handle that 8% because we've got more tenants in the building
Right.
at this
But
point.
what did you negotiate?
Yeah. So what I did was said, guys, this will only work if we do 0% interest, no payments, and we closed on the deal. And of course, they said,
Sorry, say that again.
yeah, so we did 0% interest. This is what I proposed.
For a year?
So I proposed like for a year, because I said, listen, I just need to get on title so I can finish this stabilization, optimization strategy.
You still have to do the strata thing too.
Exactly, right? And so they said, of course, no, that's ridiculous. Like nobody does 0% interest mortgage, whatever.
Meanwhile, they're trying to sell this building that's in flux between condo and apartment. Anyway,
Exactly.
Okay, so you're trying to work miracles. They're saying no.
Yeah,
Go
so
on.
they said no, and that even at that point, like it was out of contract. They were kind of like negotiating out of goodwill, I guess, because we'd already been working with them for a couple months. And then they, again, came back 24 hours later, and they said, listen, they'll do your damn seller financing at 0%, but it's only 9 months. Because they have to get it off their books. It's non-negotiable. So they say, can you close on whatever, March 9th, whatever it was.
Meanwhile, you're already filling the rooms with tenants.
Oh yeah, I said, yeah, of course, let's
You
rock.
didn't have to do any CapEx stuff. It was
Nothing.
it was in good shape.
Yeah.
I've seen it. It's amazing.
Oh, it's a beautiful
great
building, and you can imagine like it was barely utilized because they didn't even have it full with tenant buyers, right? Like, some units were never really even touched, right? They're virtually brand new. So we agreed. We'll close on it March 9th. 75% loan to value. It was like 76% loan to value or loan to cost. Seller financing. So the purchase price was $2.5 million. So already at a discount. And we knew that we could do this debt stack, because what we did was we did 76% loan to value in first position, seller financing, and the remaining of it we got second mortgage, right? So ultimately it was 100% loan to cost on debt to buy the deal at $2.5 million, but we had an appraisal for $3.2 million.
They know that?
Yeah, they actually provided it to us.
Okay,
They provided it to us. There was one that they had done like the April prior. So we're doing the math, and it works out to be like, I think it's like 73 or 74% loan to value. So if we did 100% loan to cost, based on the appraisal, we're still only leveraged 75%, right? Meaning that if we do our thing, we can liquidate if we need to, like it was a clean exit strategy. And that was the paper that we had in hand, okay? So basically what happened was we closed on it, and I always chuckle because they said it's got to close on March 9th or whatever. And we were ready, and they weren't. It actually ended up closing on like March 14th or something like that. Yeah, it's totally fine. So a couple weeks after we closed on it, now understand, like that appraisal was based on their numbers like the year prior, basically. When we got our appraisal done, shortly after closing, it was like, I think it was like 70% or 76% filled up, occupied at that time. We got an appraisal. I remember Tess and I, we were in like Quebec City, like doing like a little trip or whatever, and the broker or the appraiser calls us and they said, hey, your appraisal's done, like this is the number. And it was like 3.75 million. So I'm like, amazing. We've just created more equity in this deal, and we haven't spent a dollar doing it. All we had to do was fill it up and optimize some things.
You bought a distress sale, man. You did what Mary and I did for years. You bought something that needed to be liquidated right now.
They were motivated.
And that was the only way to get the deal done.
It was that
is an awesome deal. So that was your first appraisal. What would you say now it's at like 90%?
So right now it's 100% occupied.
100% occupied.
Yeah. And you can imagine, so the rent roll when we were closed, when we got it under contract, it was about $22,000 a month. Now it's over 40,000. It's like 41 or 42,000 today. And we got an appraisal done back in, it might have been about a year ago now. So roughly 6 months into ownership, we got an updated appraisal. So at that time, you can imagine we filled the building. So the income virtually doubled. And this is where we knew the biggest opportunity was. I mean, the big opportunity was filling it. That was obvious. But we were looking at the utilities, like the operating expenses and stuff. And we realized that however they were operating it was crazy. So like really quickly, without going into all of the weeds, we were able to reduce the electricity cost by 36% because they had electric baseboard heaters running at 35 degrees Celsius in the crawl space, 24/7, 365. So we're like, okay, well, we don't need those on anymore. And we were able to negotiate we changed different electricity and gas suppliers. Yeah, because you remember, they had condo units. So they had 32 separate residential contracts. I was able to get one commercial contract for the whole building. And then insurance, we pretty much came on par, but we were like a couple $100 less at the end of the year. So a small win there. Elevator maintenance, we renegotiated the contract for that because there's one elevator in there. We dropped that about 50%. But the big one was converting it from a condominium into an apartment complex.
Which is very rare. I mean, like our followers know, and we've certainly looked at deals where we're going from apartment to condo, and there's benefits there. Yeah. And we'll talk maybe in another video about because you actually saved property taxes doing it that way.
Big time.
And most people in Toronto, GTA, Niagara, wherever, they're saving property taxes going from apartment to condo. Yeah. You did the opposite of that, which is really interesting. That's another question. But in the meantime, let's just high level numbers. You bought it for 2.5.
2.5.
What's it worth today?
So the last appraisal we got
a year later, right?
Yeah. So it was about, I think, 6 to 8 months into ownership. The most recent appraisal we had gotten was $4.57 million. Okay. So we created over $2 million of equity.
So for anyone wondering, is there money in, say, passive investing in these commercial assets? I mean, you can invest in a house and maybe flip it if you're handy. Yeah. Or you can put some money into a commercial deal. Yeah. And if you buy it right, like this, now this is an exceptional story.
It is. It very much is.
It's not the norm.
It checks all the boxes.
It's my favorite story this year. Yeah. But there can be a tremendous upside in these deals if you buy it right, which you did.
Yeah. Like our opportunity was we identified that it was severely being mismanaged, and we knew how to fix that. A comparable situation would be something that's decently managed, but it's a very, it's an aging building. So you know that your value add opportunity is to do the renovations and bring your rents to market rate. Right. All we had to do is create more net operating income. Let's get our income up, let's get the expenses down, and that's how they evaluate the building.
It's an absolute masterpiece. One last question. Have you moved it over to permanent debt yet?
Not yet. So
it's happening.
Yeah, it's in process. So
is it going to be a perfect BRRRR?
Oh, it was on the bridge. Yeah.
All day long.
Yeah. So what we did was so you can imagine at closing we had $2.5 million of debt, loan to cost, like full loan to cost. We had it in debt. When we did our bridge, we got $3.34 million of a bridge loan on there.
So you have no money in this deal?
$0.
You have $0.
This is a $0 deal.
Dollars in this deal, and basically on the exercise that you've completed so far, you've made about $2.5 million.
Yeah, and then we're underwriting for the permanent debt right now. It's underwriting at $3.884 million. So
congratulations.
Yeah.
I think you win first prize this year. That is an absolute.
I would do that deal all day, but it'll be tough to find. Yeah, it'll be tough to find.
Good luck, but if anyone could do it, man, you guys are searching, and congratulations.
No, thank you. We learned a lot, and honestly, like I think I knew like all of the principles. But if it weren't for like the resources of my brokers, my power team, like my wife, one thing I do have to mention this, and this is the thing of like, sometimes it's best to pay to get in front of the right people. And when we lost this deal, I was actually on a call with Grant Cardone. Okay.
You were on a call with Grant
Cardone. We were at a virtual, like a web, like a.
So you're part of his.
I was in the community. Yeah. So I showed them the deal, I showed them the numbers. It was him and Ryan, and if you know Robert Martinez, like apartment rock star, he's a big Texas investor. And they all looked.
Those guys on a call.
Yeah. And I have it all like recorded. It's amazing. Yeah. And basically, I told them like, here's my strategy. This is what we're struggling with. We've lost it out of contract. It's out of contract, but like, I still want this. And Grant basically, he just said to me, is like, the numbers work. There's no question. It's like, what you have to do now is you have to tell them that you are going to be the person who's going to close on this deal. Because I was struggling with like a lack of confidence. I was getting like my butt kicked, you know, like doing this. And
Grant
so
doesn't lack any confidence.
yeah, right. So he said, he's like, you tell them, he's like, you're the one getting the appraisal, you're the one getting the inspection, you're the one talking to the lenders, you're the one flying out there walking this deal, you're the one doing all of this stuff.
You're gonna make it happen.
Yeah, you tell them not to worry about anybody else right now. It's between you and them. And I kind of changed my mentality.
Do you think that helped?
That was it for sure.
Did they believe that?
Oh, for sure.
You believed it.
That was it. Like my belief changed after that, right? And I always joke, like, it's not cheap to get in that call, right?
No,
it's not cheap to get, right? But it was worth it. Yeah, for sure.
Dude, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
That is a great story.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Right on.